I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, March the 1st. And boy, did we have spring fever to close out February. Guys just going crazy for grazing cattle, especially after this rain kicked in and all this moisture been getting way too much if you go very far east up in that Ohio River Valley. But a lot of moisture in Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, Missouri, up in the Iowa places. Just a lot of good demand for a 5-weight stock or steer. Even if it's pretty calfy, guys are still looking for them. And a lot of these guys that moved cattle off wheat, they're having to buy cattle again because they want to put them back out there because they know this wheat will take off again now that we're not getting quite as cold at night with all this moisture and getting up into the 70s now in the daytime. And this will really take off again, and they'll have some decent graze out wheat, but they've got to wait till it dries up or they'll bog it all out if they turn them out too quick. But look at the board on a Wednesday. April live cattle down 97 cents to end the day at 123.27. Of course, the board tanked because we saw the follow-up trade to that lower market that was established on Monday. February spot live cattle down 52 cents and went off the board and ended the contract at 127.5, which is actually about $1 better than what the weighted average is probably going to be for this week's trade, or maybe more than that, maybe $1.50. But April feeder cattle contract down $2.20 to end the day at 147 even. March down $1.80 to end the day at 144.75. Now you look at that fat trade, they actually had 4,800 head in the 5-area feeding region sell on Monday and Tuesday. And so when we knew that they were just sitting ducks to trade at 126 after they've already established a market, maybe we could get a hold of these weak sister Jayhawks and find out where they plan on puking their cattle next week on a Monday. Maybe 24, maybe 23. Who knows? At this rate, when we get into the bigger market-ready supplies, they could have this market down under $1 by the time we get to May. But you know, if you guys don't know where to sell your cattle and you're nervous about it and afraid you're going to miss the boat, get aligned with somebody that can pool some cattle and get some leverage. You know, I recommend Consolidated Beef Producers, which sells cattle in all the 5 areas. They're headquartered right here in Canyon, Texas. They're getting a lot of leverage. They've got a lot of the bigger feedlots. They've got some independent feeders, even some farmer feeders up north. And they will pool your cattle together, get some leverage, and try to get something for them. In the Northern Plains, I recommend Producers of Omaha. They've got several buyers out. They can make use of your regional packers. They're aligned with them pretty good, and find out what kind of cattle you've got and try to get the most dollars for them. But you look at the fat trade that sparked up middle of the morning. Your board actually tanked and then come back and then went down again, all hinging on this trade that happened. Everybody knew we were going to have to take 26 in the south, and they did. 126 for the most part. Started getting some 27 as you worked up into the Northern Plains, which is $1 to mostly $2 lower. And you know, your guys in Nebraska in the Northern Plains are looking down saying, thanks a lot, guys. If it hadn't been for you, we'd be up here somewhere in the 130s. You look at, they're still getting to negotiate their dress price, and some of them still got 205 this week, which is the same as we had when we had $130. Most of the trade on a dress basis in the Northern Plains was at 204. But if you look at that, say some cattle are carrying some tag at 62.5% dress, that's still 127.50 up north. And if those cattle are fairly clean and got a lot of fat to them and have a pretty good dressing percentage, let's say 64, that's 130.5. But your Northern Plains is sitting a lot better, and if it hadn't have been for the Southern Plains, they would be selling live cattle way up in the 130s. They've got tight market-ready supplies. We've got cattle on the western side of the Northern Plains going out of the 5 areas to hang on some empty hooks out on the west coast. And you know, it's unfortunate that we had these guys give in so easy the last 2 weeks in the Southern Plains. Box beef cutout values continue to rise. They just will not let up. Choice cutouts late or in the afternoon on Wednesday sitting at $221.03. That was up another 51 cents. Your selects at $215.10, up another 31 cents. And both of those quotes are roughly $5 higher than the bulk of last week's trade. Now look at some feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Beef Market Central, based on the 800-pound steer late in the day on Wednesday, was down $1.18, sitting at 146.03. And even though we are running out of these heavy feeding cattle going right into the feed yard, it's just that everybody's so full right now, and they've really got their concentration on buying some stocker cattle, some lighter weight cattle, calves to turn out on grass and get some of that cheap gain, and then move them on into the feed yard later. But OKC West in El Reno, Oklahoma, had a lighter run, even though things started to shore up a little bit as far as the mud and things. They had a lot bigger yearling run than they did calf run, but still just ended up with 6,600 head, which is a light run for them. You compare that to last week, which they had right up against 10,000 head, and you look at the same week a year ago, they had 14,000 head because people were bringing cattle off of wheat. Well, all those cattle have been moved off of wheat. Your cattle on feed report thought it all happened in January. I think it was more into February, but you got to remember those cattle on feed reports, even though they're by the USDA, they're still just estimates. But OKC West in the market there on 6,600 head had feeder steers mostly steady, feeder heifers in a much lighter test, $1 to $4 higher, and if you remember on Tuesday, sold calves real good on a light test, but $3 to $5 higher despite the muddy conditions. But gonna have some graze out wheat. They're gonna have to put some more cattle together. It gets so tiring trying to put cattle together to line up with your forage out there, especially in dry areas. But they got those cattle, had a lot of trouble getting those cattle put together for the first round of wheat. They barely got them out there, got them straightened up. They just started doing good, and then the wheat played out. They got dry, had to move those cattle. Now we've had some moisture. They can still make a crop out of that wheat if they want to, but most of them just farm for feed, and they're going to graze that wheat out and put another set of cattle together. But you look at another market, Platte Valley Livestock, Huss in Kearney, Nebraska, had 4,000 head there. Steers and heifers there weighing over 650 pounds were for the most part steady to $3 lower. They did note Tom Walters there is probably the best auction market reporter that they have left in Market News. So many of us have left that organization, but he is really on top of his game, knows his country and knows the game. And he did know that fewer farmer feeders were in the seats at Kearney there. But I tell you what, they were looking for some hard stocking cattle. One set of thin, green, black, empty, wrung out gant steers there, stocker steers weighing in the 7s. 46 head of them weighed 737 pounds at 166. It'd be a pretty good ticket on those, but they can cheapen them up on some early gain. But I want to give you some individual quotes on some 5-weight steers in several different parts of the country, and you can just kind of analyze this for yourself. But just not a lot of room in there, especially when you figure freight and getting cattle acclimated. But in St. Joe, Missouri, at the St. Joe Stockyards, my old stomping grounds there, they had 54 head of steers, weighed 578 pounds at 198.10. Pretty salty. That's close to the Flint Hills. No doubt they'll probably end up there. In Torrington, Wyoming on Wednesday, 72 head of 579 pound steers bring 197. Practically the same price. Now let's get out on the outer sides. At the Western Slope Cattlemen's Livestock Auction in Loma, Colorado, that's on the wrong side of the mountains, guys. They had 53 head of steers, weighed 558 at 182. I'm not sure how cheap you can get cattle moved around, but it won't be long you'll have those cattle tied right in there. And then Russell Springs Stockyards, Russell Springs, Kentucky, to Russell County Stockyards, 63 head of steers, weighed 508 at 178.75. So just good demand nationwide, from one end of the cattle production areas to the other. Good demand for these calves, and guys think it's spring, although we're just winding up February. But that's your feeder flash for Thursday.